if God hadn't done that in our belief, then our obedience would not have followed. And that's so much of what you guys teach too, is like the belief has to come first and then obedience is a product of that belief.
Welcome to the Everyday Faith Podcast, where we believe you can live out your faith every day by starting with belief, embracing your mission, committing to obedience, and pursuing community. I'm Dan.
And I'm Jess. Welcome back for part 2 of our conversation with Andrew Steier. In the first part of our conversation, we talked about starting with belief and some of the misconceptions really that people have about what it means to follow Jesus and to live out our faith, to share the gospel. Today, we're excited to dive into how Andrew invites believers to have gospel conversations naturally and often. And he does that through his book and ministry called Always Going, The Joyful Overflow of Everyday Evangelism. So as a quick recap, Andrew is a husband, a dad, and someone who believes that your grocery run might be your next mission field. So with that, Andrew, thanks again for joining us for part 2 of this conversation.
Yeah, part 1 was awesome, so let's run it back.
So much fun, truly so fun. So for our listeners, if you missed it, go back and listen to part 1 because it feeds into part 2. So,
And honestly, there may be some content in there that helps you unlock the joy you're not feeling.
kind of the goal.
Yeah. So I think it's really good.
Well, I wanted to start our time off today, Andrew, with a story that you have, just an example of sharing your faith in kind of one of those everyday situations.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, you'd say in the intro that I think a grocery run could be an evangelistic opportunity. That doesn't come from a great desire that I have for grocery store evangelism. I just want to clarify that right at the top.
It's not your passion?
It's not my passion, but I find myself doing these. You've been introduced to Halo Top ice cream. It's a lie. They say it's protein
glad I
ice
haven't.
cream. It's just ice cream.
It's just ice cream.
It's just ice cream. No, and so I'll end up at the grocery store in my pajamas and I throw my earbuds in. And nothing says don't talk to me more than earbuds. And I'm a little bit putting that out there because I don't want to be talked to at 9 o'clock at night in my pajamas at the grocery store. But the reality is that the number of people that you come into contact with in everyday life, we can close ourselves off to those people, or we can just open our hands a little bit and say, okay, God, I'm willing. Maybe I don't put the earbuds in. Maybe I try a little bit to look a little less crazy, put on some real pants to go to the grocery store because maybe I'll find myself in an evangelistic conversation. And so to your point with the story that I had mentioned to you, my car, I've been driving my car for a number of years and admittedly did not take too great care of it. And so I needed a new car. And so I was at the dealership and it's my day off. I am not in an evangelistic mindset. I have to spend a bunch of money to buy a car. So it's like, and I know from car sales in the past that I'm walking into an interaction that I'm not going to enjoy because we're going to go back and forth and all of that. And so it's not a fun process. So I walked in, not looking to evangelize and ended up, finding a car that I liked and going to take it on a test drive. Well, this gentleman that was selling me the car, he's sitting in the passenger seat and we're driving. We've got about 10 minutes on our test drive. And he makes the mistake of asking me what I do for a living. And whenever a non-Christian, someone who doesn't know Jesus or at least know him well, asks me what I do, I say that I help Christians share what they believe without being awkward or offensive. And that is the way that I say it because non-Christians are usually like, yeah, you should help those Christians get better at that. And it's like, yeah, well, I am. So good. But you don't know that we're coming for you. But that's what I do. So he asked me that. And so I mentioned the Lord. And he just goes into, he goes, I had a coworker who worked here about 20 years. He was like a father to me. And he just passed away this week. And he was big into faith too. That's all he said. It was, but it was this little moment where it was like, okay, I could go, oh, that's cool, and finish the test drive. Or I could be willing to take the one step that turned an everyday moment into a faith conversation with somebody who desperately needed it. The funeral was a couple of days later. And so I just said, hey, isn't it really cool to know that he's in heaven with God, not based on any of his good works, but just based on simple faith in Jesus Christ as his savior? And he was like, oh man, yeah, that is cool, And it was this moment where I didn't do a big gospel presentation. It was just, I wanted to clarify one part of the gospel. As we go through life, we unfold these little parts of the gospel for people. We got back to the dealership and I was like, hey man, like I'm going to buy this car from you. So can you just turn it off for a second? Like turn off the dealer part for a second, the salesman. Can I just pray for you? Because I know this is hard for you and you have to put on a smile to sell a car. So sitting in the car that I did not own yet, I just put my arm on his shoulder and just prayed for him. And we've kept up with each other and he went to the funeral and texted me about it afterwards and just kind of made this budding relationship where I can continue to unfold the gospel over time. But it all happened because I just said yes to the Lord in an everyday moment that I did not intentionally find myself in.
That's really good. He could have just been a car salesman, right? In the car to you, he could have just been the car salesman, the guy who's taking your money and getting you a new car because, darn it, I didn't take good care of my other car, right? Or, like the transition, the shift that you had is like, you know what? No, this guy needs Jesus just as much as every other person, as much as I do. And God's allowing me to share that with him in this moment, and you were willing. That's great.
And I, on the flip side, I could have just been a Jesus salesman because I've been sitting at the lady who cuts my hair. I don't go to her because she does an amazing job. It's great clips. So I go to her because I'm establishing a relationship with her because she doesn't know Jesus. And so instead of being a salesman or trying to just like get my gospel presentation across, like I said, I'm just unfolding it over time. And so I don't want to be a salesman either. I want to be real. I want to be a genuine person who loves Jesus. Like I said in the first episode, those guys in the back of the truck with me who were just real dudes who loved Jesus. That's what I want to be to this guy, so that he doesn't feel like he has to memorize a script himself or put on his Sunday best. He can just be a guy talking about eternity.
That's good.
Andrew, I feel like your superpower is your overflow for sure. Because all the examples you give are you inconveniencing yourself. And I know for me, sometimes, it's like, well, I'm not going to inconvenience myself right now. Like I'm trying to get this card and I got to get home and I got to do this thing because I've packed my schedule. God, there's no room for you in this day, right? And you're just, hey, I'm doing this from overflow. So, man, it's really inspiring. And thank you for living a life like that, especially in your marriage as well.
Yeah. I'm fighting it because I like to tell people that comfort is the enemy of conviction because it's convenient and we chase it. And I don't know, the Lord has done such amazing things in my life when I've gotten a little uncomfortable. And so I don't always, these are the highlight. This is the highlight reel, man. But I don't always kind of slay that comfort and convenience in my life. But when I do, God is so faithful. And so it's like, well, why don't I do it every time? That doesn't make any sense. You mentioned my wife, and our story is kind of crazy. Just the way that we came together and the family dynamics that we have, none of it is convenient. And so just I'll try to give the Cliff Notes versions of our family story. Yeah. So I met my wife when she was 4 months pregnant, and I was a Bible college student, and she's 6 years older, and she was pregnant. So clearly, right, the outcast. And I was working at a Ruby Tuesday, and I even had friends at Bible college who must have grown up in some fairly legalistic homes that were like, she's bad news, man. Don't you, she's bad news. And I was like, oh no, her sin is just more visible than ours is. The consequences are just more visible. So she's, but the Lord had used that situation, the pregnancy, to just draw her back to him. Well, my stepdaughter's father was not walking with Jesus. In fact, made our lives miserable. court cases and custody. And we got married when my stepdaughter was 5 months old. And we ended up moving to Florida, where I live now, and had to drive her up to go spend time with her dad once a month. And it was like, as I'm teaching kids as a youth pastor to love their enemies, I was hating someone for the first time in my life, and wrestling with that behind the scenes. And one day, my wife and I were sitting in church, and after church, I was like, did you experience that too? Did you feel that? I forget what the sermon was even on, but the Lord just convicted our hearts, and he removed the ability to hate this man from our hearts. Like when I tell my testimony, I often tell this one, not always my salvation testimony, because it's like, he made me love him without my consent. And I'm so grateful for it. Well, we started trying to just love on him, and it was still difficult. Well, one day we get a phone call, and he had kind of hit rock bottom, and he said, can I come see, my daughter? And so we're like, okay, yeah, come on down to Florida. And he drives down. Little did we know that the Lord had met him at his rock bottom. We didn't have anything directly to do with it. The Lord met him. He surrendered his life to the Lord. So when he got down to where we live, he's like, I'm going to come to church with you. It was Easter Sunday, 2017, and he made the decision to get baptized, and I got to baptize my stepdaughter's father on Easter. Wow. And it was just this picture of the gospel where it's like, God will help us do the things that we think are impossible. And he will change our situations completely 180 degrees. Now he's moved down to Florida. We see him all the time. He goes to church with us. He and his daughter have a great relationship. But it's still inconvenient because we are not just mom, dad, 2 kids, American family. Like, we have to rest on the gospel every day because we're trying to navigate relationships and in a blended family. And so, yeah, I don't know if the Lord did that in preparation for the ministry that he was going to call me to eventually. It sure has been helpful, though. Not fun, but helpful, just as a paradigm for how we are to live our lives, dying to self and loving when it doesn't make any sense or when it's not super convenient for us.
Yeah. I mean, I'm even thinking about that moment where he hits rock bottom, calls you, wants to come and visit his daughter. I mean, I have to imagine that might have been a difficult decision to say, yes, do we allow that? No, do we not? But that was a big deal for you guys to say yes.
Yeah, and I think that if the Lord hadn't prepared our hearts, it would have been no. If we hadn't been convicted and made the commitment as a married couple to love him like Jesus would, despite the difficulty of the circumstances and the relationship, if God hadn't done that in our belief, then our obedience would not have followed. And that's so much of what you guys teach too, is like the belief has to come first, and then obedience is a product of that belief.
Yeah.
And then the reality is we're trusting in God. And maybe God would have said, hey, don't allow him to come down too. And either way, whatever God says knows best is good, right? And it's cool it worked out this way. But there's also people out there that maybe it's a no. And you need to allow God to work through that process with that person, because, you have to be careful sometimes too. Yeah. So I love that you're sharing that. And the way that you how inconvenient this stuff is going to be, yet you choose it. And it's funny, we always talk about the devil loves the extremes. I feel like I am really good at like working super hard and being performative for God, or it's like, no, just be with God and do nothing. It's always hard to find that middle ground of like, how do I be? And I've been called to do some things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I've found that I need constant calibration to both sides of that. Constant calibration to the fact that I'm not performing for God. I like regular reminders that it's not like an expectation, but it's an invitation. But then also constant calibration to the fact that I am surrounded by people in the grocery store. Because without that calibration and that intentionality, like I'm just going to ignore them. I'm busy. Like I got stuff going on. My lawn grows full length every 5 days in Florida. So like I got lots of stuff in my mind that I have to get done. And so why would I think about my neighbor? But if I'm calibrated and if it's present on my mind, then I'm allowing God to open my eyes to see where I should just say yes. And that's been really helpful.
So how do you calibrate? That's my question.
Yeah, my calibration it's really the crux of our whole ministry. These are the 8 questions. I've got them on my wristbands here. There's 8 little pictures. I've got them on bookmarks in my Bible. They're all over the place. They're the chapters in my book, in the workbook, all of it. Everything is based around these 8 questions. And they're not 8 questions that are like out there for those people. Like these are 8 questions that I need every day. The first question, so I wake up in the morning and I try to, as many days as I can, and remember, I try to just start my day before I even open my eyes, feet hit the floor. I'm just asking these 8. First one is just, am I rooted in the gospel? Is the gospel, the good news of Jesus, my foundation? And that being, God is holy and perfect, and I am not, but Christ is my perfect Savior, and I get to be with God forever, right? Like, is that my foundation? Colossians chapter 2 talks about being rooted and built up in Christ and strengthened and then overflowing. And so I love that. Colossians 2, 6-7. So the first question, am I rooted in the gospel? Second one is just, has my heart been transformed? And I know that it has, but how many believers regularly think about what God did in them? Because when I think about what God did in me, it makes it a lot easier for me to see anybody else as redeemable. But if I'm never remembering, if I'm just lost in my own PR that I am such a great Christian and a great person, then why would I ever go to anybody else? But like Paul calls himself the chief of sinners. And if God could save me, he could sure save you. So has my heart been transformed? The third one I ask is, does my life reflect what I claim to believe? So that's a little bit of like that belief leads to obedience. Well, I claim that God has changed me. Is that what people on the outside are seeing? Do they see a changed life? So I think through my actions and my meetings and things like that for the coming day and just go, how can I represent God as an ambassador of his? Not as unconvincing, but as a convincing ambassador. Fourth one is, am I motivated to reach others? I think about all the interactions that I know I'm going to have that day, and then I surrender the interactions that I don't know I'm going to have that day. I know I'm going to get my hair cut soon. I know I'm going to see this young lady, right? And so I pray for her, and I prepare. My heart is ready, and my eyes are open to see the people that God has put in my life. Fifth question I have to walk through is, am I hesitant to share the gospel? Answer is, yeah, probably, but why? Why am I hesitant? A lot of Christians are walking around going, I don't share the gospel as much as I probably should, but they haven't actually addressed why. So if you don't know why, you can't combat that with anything. And so I ask myself, what's stopping me today with the unique individuals that I'm going to see today? And then how can I overcome that? Because God's word is all sufficient. So we can go to it for our answers. Sixth question, get a little long-winded, but sixth question is, am I confident in how God uses me? Do I have to close the deal, or is it enough for me to plant? And I was remind myself that God measures success in faithfulness, not just visible fruit, and he measures it in conversations, not just conversions. So those are 2 big phrases in my world that it's like, okay, well, if I can unfold one layer for this guy in the car on the test drive, just, hey, it's not about works. If that's all that I ever do in his whole story of redemption, is that enough? Am I confident in that? 7 is my preparation fueled by love? It makes the assumption that I am preparing. So I want to think about the people in my life that God has kind of put there on purpose, and I want to prepare. And I always like to say planning matters because people matter, so I should care enough to know enough. What do I know about them? How should I share the gospel with them? Am I doing any preparation? Do I do I even care what's unique about their lives? And how does that color the way that I represent Christ to them? And then finally, the thing that I think is left out of a lot of evangelistic training is, am I celebrating every gospel conversation? Do I know what success looks like? Do I know what winning looks like? If they spit on me, kick me in the shin, and run away screaming, can I still say, I won, right? I did the faithful thing. The gospel came out of my mouth, because the only real way to fail in evangelism, other than heresy, is to not say anything, to keep your mouth shut. That's failure. So those are the 8 questions that I try to run through, and I've done so much work expanding on those questions and a lot of the resources that the ministry provides.
Well, I'm excited to dig more into that. And I encourage anybody that's listening, make sure that you're digging into what Andrew and his team have built, because it is pretty amazing. The whole start with him, start with the overflow is so powerful. Instead of just getting into like, here's all the things you can do, it's, hey, let's make sure you're doing it from overflow, not just because I want to perform.
Yeah. Again, another image, maybe this is silly, but hopefully someone somewhere relates to these pictures that come to my mind. But I like to drink things like water in my coffee for some reason from like a mason jar. I don't know why. I just do. But the idea of overflow, right? Like I overflow God's presence in my life and my relationship with him, my joy in him. That's overflowing, right? In a good situation, healthy situation. But then, the lid that you put on a mason jar, it's got the cap and you twist the other thing on. Well, to me, it's like, well, we put the cap on and prevent the overflow ourselves. We do that. It's not life happening. Well, maybe it is kind of when we let life happen to us versus being intentional. But I put the lid on when I'm not spending time with the Lord. That prevents the overflow. I'm putting the lid on when I jam pack my day too full. When I don't spend time with him in the morning, so that I'm framing my day, from, again, like you said, the lens. I'm not giving myself the right lens going into the day. So I guess if there's anyone, as I'm thinking, like, man, what's the cap that I've put on my mason jar so that it can't overflow into the rest of my life and the people that I'm surrounded by? I gotta pause and think about that. If I'm not feeling the joy enough to overflow, why is that? Am I limiting myself in some way? Because there's a good chance I am. Because God's not limiting us. It's us limiting ourselves.
Jess's image is much better than mine. I was thinking of like a chocolate Fountain Dew deal. It's like overflow. It's like, this is wonderful. And it never stops.
Yeah. So the other part of this imagery, our tagline at Always Going is to help followers of Jesus overflow as they go. That it is not a go from point A to point B, make some disciples, and then come back to point A to rest. This is an as you go, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, ends of the earth. As you go, be making disciples. And so the imagery that I like is there's a difference between filling up a mason jar and choosing where you want to dump it out, like choosing where you want to, invest it, if you will, or make a mess. That gives us the control. But imagine somebody filling your mason jar perpetually and it just overflowing everywhere you go. That removes a little bit of the control from us to go, what deserves the water? And it just goes, all right, everywhere you go, you're going to make a big old mess of this. And that begins to impact work and school and home and the grocery store and the car dealer and their hair cuttery, barbershop? I don't know. But it begins to impact all of these places because you're not choosing where to invest necessarily. Like it does matter. We should make wise decisions, but also there's just a perpetual overflow of God wherever you go. And that's been helpful for me because it removes a little of the control from my life and just says, hey, everybody gets Jesus no matter where you go. So try to live a life that's like that.
That's awesome. I
like it.
Hey, as we wrap up part 2, what's something you'd like to end with and encourage all of us with?
Yeah, I preached a sermon recently. I'm on staff as a pastor at 2 different churches, part-time, and I preached a sermon about discipleship in your home. And I don't know why this is coming to mind, but one of the things I closed the sermon with is that disciple making starts at home, but it doesn't stay at home. And so in this big conversation about overflow and everyday faith and everything like that, like it has to impact the place where you are most off. Because when we fill up and like when our faith is impacting our safe places where we are off, when we put our feet up, it will go with us out into the world. But if we treat that home or safe place like a place to rest from God's mission, we will develop a skewed view of what it looks like to do ministry, because our whole life is a ministry and it's not exhausting if you see it the right way. And so for me right now, with a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old, it is my kids, like discipling my kids, because when it starts at home, it will make its way to the sleepovers. When it starts at home, it will make its way to school or sports or whatever. And so, yeah, it's got to start there and then travel with you as you go. And that's just, a huge thing kind of in my world right now with the kids.
So good.
That's so good. Thank you, Andrew, again for coming on.
Yeah, what I didn't mention that maybe I should have, but I'm not good at this yet, is that I do speaking stuff all over the place. That's kind of one of the primary things that the ministry does is I'll come and do one-day workshops on this. I'm going to teach a class tonight on Overflow Evangelism. So that's like a huge thing that we do in case anybody is wanting to have a speaker for any reason. Or I guess on the website,
for sure.
alwaysgoing.org, it has some stuff. But yeah.
Thank you for being intentional, being real. Admitting that it's really hard sometimes.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. And yet because we love, we're going to obey. So that's beautiful. Thanks again, Andrew.
Thank you for listening to this conversation from the Everyday Faith Podcast. Our goal is to inspire everyday faith conversations. Please join us by rating and reviewing wherever you're listening, and most importantly, by sharing with a friend. For more resources like this, visit our website, askaboutmyfaith.com. God bless you as you live out your faith in your everyday rhythms of life.